Maybe we should go live now.
Thank you, Sean. Welcome. I'll read the civic affirmation. We gather today to duly and faithfully carry out our duties to the best of our judgment and ability for the advancement of this district and the benefit of all of our community and fellow citizens. And the Coorong District Council members acknowledge and pay respect to the traditional custodians of the land and waters, the Nudgingeri people, whose ancestral lands are on which we meet today. We acknowledge the deep feelings of attachment and relationship of Aboriginal people to country, and we pay our respects to elders past and present. We also extend that respect to all First Nation people. Thank you. Councillors, we have one apology. Councillor Land is an apology. There's none others. Welcome Kerry and Linda up the back to observe a council meeting. Never as daunting as it may look. I have no acknowledgements unless councillors have any, but what I would just ask people at the end of the meeting is to consider a Remembrance Day wreaths, and we can present them or place them on Remembrance Day and what we wish to do. We might do that at the end of the meeting if we may. Item number 2 is confirmation of minutes of the ordinary meeting, including the confidential held on the 15th of September 2020. Is there someone move that way? Councillors Qualman and Roundtree. Any discussion around that at all? There being none, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. And the special meeting held on the 22nd of September 2020. Someone move the minutes of that, please. Councillors Roundtree and Taylor. Any discussion? There being none, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Adjourned business, we have nil. Minute action list, item 4, councillors. What have we got as questions out of that, please? Councillor Roundtree.
Minute 198:20. It's just there's a question asked by Councillor Arthur about charging of the landscape levy. Sort of what the outcome was said here, as all landscape boards have a common goal of landscape management and are the relevant authority for the sustainable management of the environment, including land, animal, plant control activities, a common charging method should be applied. That was the question. Just what is there been an outcome of that? Because it's not just completed.
We have written a letter to the landscape, to the Minister involved, Councillor, is that Minister Spears, to highlight the differences that we currently have with the two boards, asking can there be consideration that we have a common practice between the two boards. We have also learned in the meantime that the landscape boards, although they actually ask us to collect the levy in a particular way, and as you know, 2 different types, that's not actually legislative. We can choose to collect in a particular way, so maybe we've got some control over it, but we're just waiting for the response from the Minister.
So can we move that from completed to work in progress or something, so that we can, or you give us feedback on that once an answer is?
We've actually written a letter which is what the motion asks. As soon as we get a response from that letter, I will let you know.
Okay, great, thank you.
I understand we're the only council which has split down, or was the only council. Split charging systems. Anything else around the minute action list, councillors?
Just draw your attention to 17320. We have not yet sent off that assessment to OB. We're still waiting for governments to come back with the final report. As you would imagine, they're being particularly vigilant around the information that they're providing to us, so we haven't actually sent off that letter yet.
Thank you. Anything else in the minute action list, councillors?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, not on, through you can see it. It's not on the action list, but it hasn't been fulfilled as far as I'm on. 2219 is regarding the investigative volunteer living caretaker for the Caravan Park and the role of the caretaker for the period of 12 months to be reviewed annually. Is anything being put in place on that?
So through you, the correct me if I'm wrong, Councillor, but the response a couple of months ago was that we would look at that when we looked at the whole governance arrangements around the Carnarvon Caravan Park. We haven't done anything more with that. We do have actually a person living there, but not in the caretaker capacity, if that's what you're alluding to.
No, I'm just alluding to
No,
that. Yeah.
no, we have no, and there's been no investigation yet as to whether we actually do need a caretaker or not, or whether it can just be part of council's responsibility to care for that particular park.
And another one is the 2519, which is not on the list either, is seeking advice from Local Government Insurance Service regarding cost-effective public liability insurance for all community-owned halls in the district. Has anything been done about that?
Yeah.
Yeah, through Mr. Mayor. We did arrange for the scheme to come and speak to council and explain about insurances, etc. But COVID put a stop to that. We'll get that back on the radar and see if they can come.
Okay. And there's one other here, sorry. 42619, which is also dropped off. Council accept the committee's recommendation that a business case study and comparative between the existing accounting software and the new software option be provided. This was regarding the new IT work. I think one person did present to council. Was the existing provider given the same opportunity or others as per that motion?
So you meant, we had presentations from two providers. We've gone to the market asking for new software, LGA, and currently at the procurement level looking at which tender process will be the successful one, and that will come back to council. The budget's been set for that one already.
Yep. The very last, 0425, the motor vehicle policy. The motor vehicle policy will be reviewed and updated by the Chief Executive Officer and presented to council. The council will be provided with the details of private use of vehicles being used in conjunction with salary packaging and or commuter use and the total cost.
So
That has not been provided as yet.
So the motor vehicle policy has come to council?
Yes,
And
but
it's
the
been
second part has not been presented to members.
I'll take that on notice, councillor.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Roundtree.
Just further 2 minutes, 42619, that regarding the computer software. Was there 2 meetings? Because I've only attended one meeting.
There were two providers who, no, yes, you're right, councillor, you only came to the one that we don't currently use.
Correct,
Yeah,
yeah.
we also had a tender or presentation which was very short from the existing contractor. And in a nutshell, their undertaking is that they will upgrade our current system. And that's part of their tender process now. So LGA, through their procurement, are looking at which is the best deal from a council perspective.
Okay, great, thank you.
Anything else, councillor? There being nothing else, move on to questions. Questions with notice. Councillor Qualman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Members, it's mainly, I formally presented this because I've been receiving some concern from our local residents, how long it's been drawn out, this long-winded process, and unfortunately it's beyond the control of all of us because the contractor has been broke, of course. And they just really want to know where we're at, so that's why the formal question was put, and now it's a public document for them to see what progress we've had or where we are at. Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
So councillors, in the information document, there's some mock-ups, I call it, of an outline of a proposed design. Has everyone looked at them? Particular comment around them? As we go to public consultation very soon, is that?
So Mayor, for you, there has been some showing of that design to the businesses along this street, but I get a sense, and I'll take your advice, but most people now, I think, just want us to get on with it and do it. So that's what we're planning to do, unless you tell us otherwise.
Councillor Qualman.
If I may, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Another question regarding this, through you to the CEO. Is the council going to have some sort of alternative to the building of the new toilet, another toilet in Bluewell, temporary?
So you mean, so we're hoping that, hope's not a word that I use. Because there's an existing toilet and the new toilets won't go directly onto that site, we'll be able to run them concurrently, build the new ones, demolish the old ones, in quite a, elegant fashion.
Thank you. Thank you. Second one is councillor Roundtree.
Yes, I'm very happy with how that's progressing. I think I've been liaising with the Canalpan townspeople about the signage that we'll have. I read about 6 or 7 of them now, looking at it, measuring, confirming, checking, and they're very grateful to have been part of the process. So I'm happy.
Thank you, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Okay, we move to 5.2 questions without notice, councillors. Councillor Taylor and then councillor Yang.
So I have a question from the Progress Association of Taylor Bend. The president and the treasurer are requesting information on the state of the ferry at Dixon Reserve and also the ex-ferry landing at Wellington East. Does council have any plans for maintenance of either or to?
So that would be in relation to the ferry landing, Taylor members and Taylor topics.
Yes.
Mm.
So they just want a follow-up regarding both of them. The president of the Progress Association has found information on preservation, I believe, for at least the one at Dixon Reserve, if not for the one at Wellington East. So whether that has any impact on what council can or can't do. The understanding is that the one at Dixon Reserve has been made safe. So basically they're asking, are council going to do anything with it regarding maintenance, or is that it?
So that may involve whether the heritage listed, it may involve quite a few things. We
We'll take that on notice.
Notice, councillor. Is there any others? Councillor Yang.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In regards to the stormwater issue in Hutt Street, off of, I believe, 2nd Avenue, Councillor Cornwall commented on. I'm just wondering the state of play, knowing that the house and the block are basically below sub-base level of the side road, which is the issue, where the stormwater is being built. Whether we're having to look at that in any way.
Apologies first, David Mazel is tied up with waste all this week, and Steve is sitting in. I'm not sure. I know that David has actually had a look at that issue, but I will have to get back to you on what the possible solutions or budgetary considerations might be for that one, but I know that it's certainly on his agenda.
I'm very familiar, Mr. Mayor, with the property. I've been there quite a few times in the past. And from memory, the floor level is actually below the surface level of the side road. So whatever we do, we will be turning it into a rice paddy. So we need to be very mindful of the fact that whatever water is gathered on the block will ultimately be remaining there. And if that's the case, we do not want to be adding to their woes by directing any further water in.
So, councillor, is that street had a history of ponding of water during large rainfall events?
Actually, it has. It's always been a problem with successive owners of that property.
I'm more concerned that we turn ourselves into a rice paddy. I thought that was sort of thing
Yeah.
like rather at the bottom of the Murray, but anyway.
Yeah, unfortunately, Mr. Mayor, when we did First and Second Avenue in that area, we raised the road level significantly. And this was pre-amalgamation, which caused a lot of problems with the existing housing in that precinct.
Certainly, it's not our priority in terms of building new streets at the moment. Okay. Anything else? Councillor Roundtree.
So I just wanted to follow up on the issue with the Peak Playground, Peak Districts Playground. This is currently being negotiated, and the funding for that is outside of the community's grant. So are they looking to get help from council to replace it, or where do we sit with that?
We met with the association out there and had a discussion about the playground. They are going to go away and see what, from a contribution point of view, they might make to the playground. And from a council perspective, we were looking at budget considerations, and then we'll come back together and work out how we might get a playground there.
Just following on from that, is there any part of the old playground that can be reused?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there isn't. What was there was actually non-compliant, so that's all been removed.
Mr Mayor, through you to the CEO. What properties, if any, are exempt from the NRM levy?
Oh, the landscape is like, sorry.
Through you, Mayor.
Yes.
So councillor, that will need to be taken on notice. It's a pretty broad question. Pretty broad question, I think. Nonetheless, councillor Coleman.
Mr Mayor, Willow Street, being a patriotic Australian and proud of South Australia and very proud to honour the Indigenous people of this area, a bit bewildered why 3 or 4 days during the month we had no flags flying.
The reason we may not have the flags flying is that the wind is too strong for those particular days. We don't put the flag up on those days. But if you tell me which particular days, I can tell you there was a particular issue.
Go on, councillor.
Thank you. However, I know one day wasn't suitable, Mr Mayor, but one day was like this.
I'll have to check why that may not have been the case.
Just asking. Thank you.
Is that right? Any other questions without notice, councillors? There being none, we move on. Number 6, petitions, we have Neil. Number 7, deputations, I have Neil. 7.1, public question time, I have a written question here. This is in relation, where's it gone?
What's the question on?
It's gone up there. From Sandra Douglas, asked whether any trees will be lost from the area where the new tailor-made public toilets are going. Noting that on the council side of the path running on the railway line fence, look like they've been drilled the trees with holes in it. Will they be removed? So the response that's just been given is that no trees are being removed as part of the toilet project at Taylor Bend. Toilet block location is to the north of the existing toilet block location. And while we're unaware of any trees being drilled by us, it would be a reasonable guess that borers have been active on some of those trees, and that might lead people to think that someone's drilling holes in it. The tulip tree is a particular victim of borers. Steve, you want to add anything to that?
That's correct.
Yeah, so that's what we think's happening there. So that is that in public question time, thank you. Move on to number 8, 8.1, my report, councillors, is there. I would ask you, you've been sent the agenda for the LGA meeting in Adelaide next week, I think it is. If you've got anything that is up as an agenda item you wish to give me some feeling or direction on how to vote, please don't be afraid to inform me. Any questions around my report? Yes, please. Yes, we'll start with over here.
You had a meeting on the 15th of October with Senator Anne Ruston and Simon Birmingham regarding federal matters affecting local government. Can you expand what those federal matters that might affect local government are?
So as is the way now, we are informed whether we can join a Zoom meeting. And I can proudly say I nearly did that one on my own.
Really?
Nearly did that one on my own. And so other mayors put in questions, and it runs usually for about an hour. And so if I can attend, for want of a better word, I will try. They open to all elected members then, or not? Just only for presiding members.
The invitation comes to the mayor, but because it's Zoom, I don't think there will be any limitation on, apart from overall numbers, because sometimes Zoom has a cap, depending on what variety they're using, for other elected members to phone into that. With that particular one, most of the conversations, as you would expect, were around COVID-19 and the JobKeeper, the impact on the economy, the Commonwealth's plans to, and the budget's been and gone since then, how they see the economy growing and the speed of it over the next coming years. So it was really quite a general conversation to me.
Yeah, I think it was, but particularly nothing come out of it. Like fairly as polished ministers, those two, and they wouldn't tell us anything we didn't already know, probably.
So through Ms. Mayor, nothing to worry about.
No, so that seems to be the new way for quite a few things with LGA, and I think it's actually quite effective in terms of keeping us informed, up to date for the time. Nothing else?
No.
Councillor Yenge?
Mr. Mayor, your meeting on the 6th of Council and as Chief Executive Officer, would like to note that I was also in attendance.
Okay, so
That's the only.
around governance, councillors, so. There.
Sorry, councillor Hughes, that's no sign.
That's all right. Any other questions, please? Okay, councillors, Councillor Coleman has a report. Any questions to him? You want to add something, councillor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to take the opportunity. You'll notice I attended quite a few of Parliament Progress Association and the Parliament Christmas Parade. We had a meeting last night, and unfortunately, we decided because of COVID-19 that the 2020 Christmas Parade will be cancelled. That's for people's information.
It's very sad. It's always a great joy to.
Yes, it's quite successful, Mr. Mayor. 5,000 people, and no, it's just too hard for our limited resources.
Sorry to hear that. Councillor Round, you got a
So
question?
just a question through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Coleman, with all the releasing of restrictions, what was the main thing that held it up?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, going by the way it is at the moment, still it's the registration and to have a compound. And if you have a compound, people got to stay in there, and then you have up to 1,500, you got to have 20 volunteers. We struggle probably to get 10. And then at each end, you'd have the risk of people still gathering on the side of the street, which is unmonitored, you know, and so that we thought, yeah, it's too hard. We didn't want to push ourselves to get a nasty fine, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. for that.
If, don't worry, Mr. Mayor, it was discussed at length.
No, I can well appreciate it.
Thank you.
The emotion on that. Anything else in your report? Okay. Councillor Roundtree, you have a report? Nothing there? No. Councillor Taylor, your report? Anything you want to add? Sorry, excuse me. Item 9, notices of motion, we have Neil. Item 9.1, motions without notice, councillors. Councillor Roundtree?
Whether this should be a motion or not, but I figure if it's a motion, then it can possibly get into the actions to get done. But I'd like to move that the CEO provide elected members with an up-to-date org chart showing all staff positions filled and vacant. And I thought if we made it a minute, then we might have it. Because I think back in July, questions asked about it and it was meant to be forthcoming and I haven't seen one yet.
So you made, the updated web org chart is automatically up on the website, but we can circulate that link to you.
Yeah, I didn't know to check the website.
Yeah, we can do that.
So it's already done?
Yeah, as anything changes, we update that org chart on the website.
We also then just get copies of selected, well, I would like one of my fellow elected members, but I'd certainly like a copy.
Just continue with the motion, councillor.
No,
you
I
know that.
withdraw the motion, it's already done.
Okay, anyone else? Motions without notice, councillors?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move that the staff present an in-depth printout of the proposed costings for the plant and machinery maintenance budget, account 01.0455 for the 2019-20 financial year, and provide the actual costings to the infrastructure and assets meeting on the 27th of October.
So through you, councillor, have we captured the right information?
Sorry, I didn't make, I don't know if that's the right budget.
Okay. You know that. Oh. Second one.
recycling.
Second bottom paragraph.
Councillor wish to speak to that motion, it's roughly right.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I just, we had a report commissioned by UHY Haynes Norton, 2019. One of the things that they pointed out in there, that the budgets are inaccurately reported with differences in the budget adopted by council and its finance system. And council's management reports provide inaccurate financial information. Now, we have here a budget item where it was budgeted for $1,093,625. The actual expenditure was $1.3,003,957. So it's a $210,332 overspend on that individual plant item. The reason given, the only reason given, was increased maintenance. Now, if any business that's got an over budget of $200,000 on a $1 million budget item should be providing the reasons, in depth, the reasons for that budget.
Sorry, councillor, what was the name of that report you just quoted? And you
Plant at UHY Haynes and Norton report was commissioned by the council looking into our finances.
Do you know what the date of that report was?
May 2009.
So the year before last financial year.
Yeah, when Corinne was on board.
So the question, councillor, I'm just wanting to be clear, relates to the 2018-19 financial year?
It related to the accounting system or the finance of the council.
For the 18-19 year. So through you, Mayor, we can provide you that information. I'm not sure if we can change anything at this point, but.
But what I'm saying is, we are virtually the directors of a business here. And you've got an item that's $1 million budget and it's nearly $200,000 overspent with no reason whatsoever. Now, surely that should, from my point of view, if you look at those figures, you as the CEO should raise bells, and you should be going to your director and down the line to find out what is actually causing a problem of $200,000 overspent.
So through you, Mayor, that's exactly right. That would raise, but given that it's almost 2 years old now, that report.
No, this is 1920's expenditure. What I'm asking for is 1920.
Oh, correct, but
Yeah.
the report.
Which is just out of what's been done today.
Yeah, but the report you're referring to is May 2018, is that right?
The report was made in 2019.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter, so if you have a report, nothing's been done about it.
Okay.
Councillor, basically you're saying what do we spend on plant machinery maintenance in 1920? That's the long and short of this discussion.
Year 1920.
Yeah, that's what your motion says. I'll look for a second. Councillor Coleman is the second. I'll speak to the councillor. Open for debate. Discussion around this item. Councillor Ling.
I just raised a query through the CEO, what the expense might be, and the time factor is going to cause staff disruption.
Through you, Mayor.
Needling out all this information.
I could hazard a guess. I might look to the director who looks after those staff completely.
I'm just reading my stuff.
You've got it down. For you, Mayor, can I ask Linda what she thinks the time would take to find out that information?
We have really got something wrong with their accounting system, haven't we?
So through you,
It's a
Mayor,
different subject.
we have said that many times.
So we've got an account number there, which is 0194. What is, when you press the button on that, what is there? Nothing.
Through you, Mayor. The accounting system is complex. there could be costs that aren't in that particular, I could give you that particular code, probably at the drop of a hat. Would it be right? I would need, this is where probably Linda's thinking about, she would need to look at other accounting codes to see whether there are other costs associated with what you're asking for that aren't in that particular cost code. Now, whether that's a right or wrong, you know that the accounting system we've got at present needs some work. So asking a question around that, council, is not going to change the fact that our accounting system doesn't give you the answer quickly. We can give you the answer, but it will take a little bit of work.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if I can just also say, the staff aren't sitting there waiting for this request. There's a load of stuff already on their desk that has to be prioritised.
Councillor Roundtree's next.
My view is that, I suppose the question, it's such a hard one because I certainly understand the issue of the complicated system, but when we get an audit done, do the auditors ever look at those sorts of anomalies and flag them? Because if not, then what's the use of an auditor? Like, I really struggle when I see the things that have escaped and the things that have happened, how an auditor doesn't pick up that anomaly and raise it for further investigation.
The auditors will look that we have processes in place. They won't have a comment about whether our processes are ordinary or not. They will know, we can have a whole manual process. They won't make a comment on that. They might say you're mad, that it's not the most efficient way to do it. But they want to know that you've got a process in place, that you can get to the end point that you need. We have a process in place, we have an automated system, but we know that that system needs a lot of work. And through you, Mayor, we are working on that, but that won't be repaired until we get a new system in place. So whatever questions are asked around, similar to Councillor Arthur's, the answer now, or whether it was a year ago, will be the same. We can get you that information, but it does require some work.
I think through you, Mr. Mayor, I think the terminology around this audit needs to be changed. I think what would have really helped us all the way through this process is if we understood when an auditor comes in, they're looking at process only, not numbers. Because I think in my mind, when I hear that an auditor's looked at a company or a business, they've actually checked for anomalies like this and explored why it's happened. But if our auditor is a process only auditor, then I think we need to be very clear in that terminology that we have a process audit as opposed to a financial audit, which would pick up completely different things. And I think from my perspective, these two keep matching together and confusing me as to why aren't things picked up. So we've got a process audit that looks at how you do things, and then completely separate to that is a financial audit, which ought to have picked up that anomaly.
So through you, Mayor, I don't think it's an anomaly. I think that the council was asking what was the repairs that were needed to be done. What the audit will check was there an audit trail around those repairs. They're not going to say that I think you've spent 200,000 unwisely, because you've got an audit trail that shows accounts and invoices are related to that particular expenditure. So that's what the auditor will look at. They won't say, take me to that machine and show me why you think you should have spent 200,000. That's not the role of an audit. They want the audit trail. So, but they won't question, and it's not an anomaly. It's about a justification of whether that expenditure was legitimate or not. And so when an auditor looks at it, they will look at it, was there fraud involved? Is the invoice and the audit trail there? Tick, yes, but they won't question whether we should have spent the money or not, because that's not their decision.
So is our auditor process driven or financial driven?
It's not a distinction auditors make. The auditor will look to see if the audit trail is sufficient, and are the invoices there? Is there justification for the expenditure in terms of the invoice? Do they match? And at the end of the day, do all things balance? They're not going to question the expenditure itself to say, was the 200,000 legitimate? Because that's the role of the depreciation. They're looking at them.
Who handles that part?
The maintenance.
No, who handles the part of looking as to whether things were spent where they should be spent, and if there's any money allocated to accounts, like, to an account number that isn't got a justification sitting behind it? Is that done? Who looks at that?
The internal audit of maintenance
Internal audit
process, yes.
Right.
Councillor Yench.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do question the value of the motion in the sense of cost. It is retrospectively looking. I don't believe there's been any corruption or wrongdoing at all. I think we are endeavouring to change our system so that it becomes more easy for individuals to understand. And I quite frankly think that it's going to take 5 days or a week. I think that money can be better spent putting a new system in place so that we can understand what's going on, rather than going back over what we perceive are anomalies, but in reality have been accounted for under the previous system in a legal manner. So I will be voting against this motion based on the cost implications.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak for or against the motion?
Oh,
I'll go with Councillor Hill first, then Councillor Kwong.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that we get to see those on a quarterly basis, spending and budgets and things. So wouldn't we be the ones that have to identify that there's been a $200,000 overspend, or does it only come out at the end?
So through the finance committee now, you get down to a certain particular level, and that expenditure would have shown, correct me if I'm wrong, previously at a finance committee, you would have seen that expenditure in the finance committee that followed the May last year report from UHY, is my understanding. I wasn't here, so I'm only guessing, but I'm assuming that would have been the case.
Councillor, sorry, Councillor, that's it. Thank you. Councillor Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The reason I second the members is that I find the term just maintenance, it's a bit generic or a claim statement, because I know well aware how some of the other members feel about the way we run the financial things around in council. We need greater detail, and we can learn from this, because as we drill down, and we might pick up, well, we could have done a better maintenance job, and this is something must have been wrong, and money was wasted by the sound of it, but I haven't gone to definitive enough about it. That's my concerns, and I know it's going to take a week to dig up, but I feel it's a good thing because we're going to learn from it. Thank you.
Anyone else before I speak? So I see the motion as useful. In the year period we're talking about, councillors be aware we deferred the changing over of the grader base at Menengi, and the repairs on that ended up more expensive than perhaps some people imagined. We also had another grader motor blow up, very unusual. People, councillors would know I operate a fair bit of machinery, and sometimes you have a bad year. But it was picked up later in the statements we're adopting as an anomaly. Whether we can meet the time frame of the 27th, I think probably council would like to, but that might be hard work to achieve. It will be interesting to note if we've got any particular machinery or group or cost base that for some reason blew out for no particularly explainable reason. So I see it's become quite a large cost base of the business, therefore probably we need to get on top of it. Councillors would note we did have a machinery listings, and there was a list of machinery that should be replaced, and the challenge is, do we need all the machinery we've got? Are we maintaining too much, not enough, the wrong machines? So I think this could inform that debate. Councillor Arthur will close this debate.
Yes, I'd just like to make one comment as I close the debate. If it's going to take a week to get these figures, how have we got the figures in the first place? You have got that is a specific account number, which, as far as I remember, when I've asked for this sort of thing previously, you press a button and you get a printout, and it's all printout of all the things that happen, and then you get a printout of the actual expenditure. That is the overarching number, and it's made up of little bits and pieces here. And it's only if you're going to take a week to find how that budget figure is arranged out, how could anybody have any confidence in the finance department of this council? Because you are presenting us with a figure that where have you got it from? It's got to be consolidated within the accounts. So what I'm just saying is, I believe that, and it also it needs to go to the Infrastructure and Asset Committee, because we may have a problem. We may not be doing maintenance properly, and so that's something that should be looked at.
Okay, councillors, you'd be aware that we're actually advertising still for a position to actually look after the plant and machinery and their things. Another thing that's been taken forward so far. I'm going to close that debate. Thank you, councillor. Put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? So councillors Lang and Yench are against that motion. Balance of the councillors, councillors Hill, Taylor, Roundtree, Arthur, Bowman, Simmons were for. Declare it carried. Thank you, councillors. We're on motions without motions without notice. I'm trying to do. Any further motions that? You've got another motion, councillor.
Well, really.
Not a question, there's to be a motion.
Yeah, I'll move that the staff provide us the details of expenditure against budget for 0415, roads, general other budget, you've got it there. The budget was 162,500. The actual was $139,712. It was underspent $22,788. And the reason for the underspending was savings due to minimal tree cutting. You know, this chambers last year was screaming out, and the staff was screaming out for money for tree cutting, and yet we've underspent the budget by $22,000 by saving on tree cutting.
So your motion,
I know the reason why.
your motion, councillor, is
Up there.
Is it the one about Blackburn implementation?
no, it's not about that.
No, the bottom one.
That is the bottom one.
010415. Move the staff provide an installation of expenditures in the account. Oh, yeah, yes, the 01.0415.
1.5.
Yeah, and take that one out.
Implementation,
that's-
yeah.
Oh, no, yeah.
There's not one that's 01.0415.
Yes, it, yeah.
It's up above, okay.
Roads general under budget. The staff provide the details. The budget and actual costings of that account of roads, general other budget, which was underspent $22,788. With the explanation that the savings were due to minimal tree cutting.
Move, councillor Arthur. Yep. I'm looking for a seconder. Councillor Roundtree is the seconder. Councillor Arthur, you've pleaded your opening speech.
Yeah, I'd just like to, particularly when we were having trouble finding money for tree cutting last year, we had to cutting back the budget, and then we've underspent the budget by $22,000.
Certainly. Councillor Roundtree, you wish to add to that debate?
No, I think councillor Arthur's explained well.
Councillor Coleman?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Tree trimming, someone elaborate a bit more. Is this just roadside or the whole shooting match trees?
It would go
Yeah.
I think on what the code is that you detail, that's roadside. Obviously, but yeah, without knowing the full code, because what that is, that's basically a summary, and then under that there are sub-accounts that actually identify whether it be roads or parks and gardens, so full rules. So.
Identified in the report. Anyone else wish to speak for or against the motion? Being none, you'll close debate, councillor.
closed.
All right, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. Anyone further?
I have got a couple others, but I think I'll get
Give
through.
you the stare down
The
now.
CEO.
Yes, you can handle them, I would trust. There's no further motions without notice, councillors. No. Move to item 10, Office of the Chief Executive Officer's report. Number 1, the adoption of the Disability Access and Inclusion Plan 2020-2024. We have to have this adopted by the end of this month. As a legislative requirement, over councillors Taylor and Lang, please, for the mover and seconder. And I just thank the staff, Kelly in particular, for the work that's gone into this, and I think some excellent feedback from people, and I would note, in my mind in particular, footpaths come out of this one. In particular, and I think we saw that in the initial survey. Councillor Taylor, you wish to speak?
I'd just like to reiterate and thank the staff for their input to this. I think it's been a long time coming. It's an excellent document, and it's really good to see it on the books at last.
Thank you. Councillor Lang.
Yeah, thanks. It was interesting to see a lot of the input from members of the public, particularly in regard to the Canalton Bakery. May I ask the question of appropriate staff, whose responsibility is it as far as disability access to private businesses? I always believe it's private business.
Perhaps the CEO.
Not a councillor.
The CEO had this discussion a couple of hours ago, councillor, so she may. She'll do no, you can do it again, just for everyone's benefit.
The primary responsibility is to the landowner, so the shopkeeper or manager or whoever is owning that piece of land. That's not to say that as a council, we would not work with that landowner to improve things. So if, for example, and I'll use the bakery as an example, wanted to have disabled access for people with disabilities, and there was nothing wrong with our footpaths, then it would be their responsibility. But we would come along, if we were upgrading the footpaths for any reason, and talk to them about a partnership about how can we improve this access. So it would be a partnership to not absolve them of their responsibility in terms of what they need to do, but also council acknowledging that they may have to upgrade things. So sometimes you get better bang for your buck, in a sense, for your money when you're upgrading a footpath in front of a shop. So, but ultimately, and primary responsibility is with the owner.
Would we look at putting in a ramp, such as we've got here in Railway Chelsea? It's some of the shops, such as the takeaway pizza place. It's got a ramp up over.
So you know, there are always options, and documents such as this highlight to the community and to you as councillors and us as staff what needs to be done. It's always a constant retrofitting for existing infrastructure, and it's a reminder when we're going forward with new infrastructure what needs to be done. So it's a dynamic and constantly a document that we will use on an ongoing basis into the future, whether it's retrofitting. And retrofitting is never ending because there's a lot of infrastructure that's been around for a lot of time, and sometimes the risk associated with the access doesn't match the cost involved in retrofitting and repairing it. And so sometimes there will be places where the disability access is not remediated because of the cost and the risk involved. And so footpaths are a very good one. So if we're upgrading a footpath, the first thing we would look at is, can we do this better from a disability access perspective?
Councillor Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just too, like the other fellow councillors, pass on my thanks to all the staff involved on a very comprehensive and well-tabled report. And this is helping join in the gaps for special people. Coorong Council, with everybody else, is doing the right thing to make life just a little bit better for them.
Anyone else, councillors? There is none. Councillor Taylor. Close debate. Thank you. So the motion is the council adopt the Disability Access and Inclusion Plan titled Inclusive Coorong, creating thriving and inclusive communities as tabled. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Number 2, 2020-21 Community Grants Round 1. The first part of this, councillors, is have councillors, do councillors need to nominate that they have an interest in any of those clubs, groups, whatever? It's Councillor Taylor, we'll start with you. Councillor Taylor, which sort of interest is it going to be, councillor, or material? Or-
Material.
All right, councillor, thank you. Secondly, I will declare an interest as I'm a committee member of the Kemaduk Amalgamated Pastime Club. So, and that is material. Actual. What's that? Oh, Councillor Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've been approached to join up with the Tarnbend Historical. So I will declare an interest on that to sit on the committee.
Righto. Anyone else feels that they actual or perceived actuals, just put actuals down, please. Councillors, there's probably two parts to this I think we need to deal with. Councillor Taylor.
My concerns that the difference between the actual and material.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So a material affects you personally. You're going to get personal gain from it, either financially or reputationally or whatever. Actual is you may have an interest in a committee, maybe a committee member. So you have a true actual interest in it. So if it's a material declaration of interest, then you must leave and cannot vote. If it's actual or perceived, then you just declare that it's actual or perceived. You declare if you're going to stay or leave, and declare if you're going to vote or not.
So in your recommendation for actual?
I would suggest yours would be an actual or perceived. You're on the committee.
So through Mayor Simmons, I will declare an actual conflict of interest, men in the room and not vote.
Okay.
Yes, all right.
I thought we gave you one. Yeah, probably, you know, I mean, I need to bring it with me.
Councillor Coleman, we got yours and we want to be.
No, that's all right. Just an air clarification, since I'm actual, I can stay in the room, but I can't vote, correct?
Thank you.
You make a choice.
Make a choice.
I'll vote.
Okay, I think the way to handle this is council probably does need to consider, and it's in the report, whether they wish to allocate nearly all of the budget line for this year in round one. That before you perhaps start voting on it, I'd indicate that we would need to perhaps pull out the three ones where we've indicated interest, some of us first, and vote on them separately, and then perhaps council was of that mind, vote on the rest en bloc. So the first question is, does council wish to allocate at this stage $45,615 in this round? I see council's advice. Councillor Hill, thank you.
I'll expect a few of these into one week, so obviously, you know, can't say, oh, you can do it in 6 months' time, 3 months' time, it's quarterly, we'll go open it up. I'm quite comfortable to be allocating under the current circumstances with COVID. Now, I think it's probably good to have a few community things happen quickly, so I'd be happy to vote for en bloc.
So you think that not having much left for next round is not an issue at this stage?
Not at the moment, no.
Okay, councillor Roundtree.
I support that theory to get something cracking now while we've got coming out of COVID. Do we have just on the rest of that question, do we have an idea of the sorts of groups that may want or need community support funding later in the year? Like
Councillor, you'll note that there's 4 people who were excluded, 4 groups who were excluded at this stage due to basically late ones, so you'd expect they might be in the brig again, but no particular one, but since it's a policy that's brought back, there might be just some people not aware of it yet. It's an excellent group of divergent sort of different projects in it, I'll give it that. But, so you're with Councillor Hill, you think you'd be happy to vote knowing that there's not much left in the pot after this? Councillor Yench?
I concur with the councillors.
Very good. That makes that 1, 2, 3. I'm going to take that the councillors are knowing on what basis they're voting. Councillor Arthur,
Yes, sir.
you come up here, please, Chair, while I will leave the meeting, and so hopefully council will deal with the first one, which is the Coomanduka Amalgamated Pastimes Club.
They're doing-
So I need to record what's coming up.
Have we decided upon whether we do the whole lot?
No, we can't. But that's the motion.
Okay, you're going to do them individually.
Just, yes, so one that needs to fall,
Yeah.
everybody else can vote on this particular one, then Mayor will come back, and then we'll vote on the next one, and then if Council Taylor is going to start with but then we'll vote on the next one, and then Council Common, and then we'll select, we'll vote on that.
Right, we'll put the first one up, which is the $5,000. Like a mover first, move Councillor Wyman, second Councillor Roundtree. The council in accordance with the community grants policy and procedure, approved funding of $5,000 to the Coomanduka Amalgamated Pastimes Club play group. Is there any further discussion on that motion? This is not Councillor Wyman, would you like to? All those in favour? Passed unanimously. Oh, okay.
Second one would be Taylor Bend RSL Taylor Bend Sunbrass, $2,000. I'm prepared to move that one, please, councillors Foreman. Hill, thank you. Speaker, councillor. Councillor Taylor, you'll be abstaining from voting, is that please? Thank you. Of all the many ones in this group, I thought this was the most interesting project, actually. Awesome. We close the debate, councillor. The motion. All those in favour? Those against? It's carried with the 8 councillors, the 7 councillors, sorry, voted for it. Abstain. Taylor Bend historians, the bottom of the 3, Councillor Foreman, you will be abstaining from voting. Someone move that way, please. I wish Councillors Roundtree and Lang. Any discussion around that?
Mr. Mayor, I'd just like to make a comment about that. That has been something that the Coorong Library Board has been looking at, the provision of that sort of equipment to be shared between the 4 libraries to actually record all this historical business. And some have been going for a lot longer, and Taylor Bend's only been going for 2 years. And you know, I think it's probably remiss of us to provide justice to Taylor Bend historians with this equipment. If you look, there's actually two lots in there. There's 4,400 and 894, so it's $500,000, and that's about the amount that the the Coorong Libraries Board was looking for. So I couldn't support it for that reason.
Okay, councillor, fine. Perhaps the library board can't apply for this fund. So,
It would be, if we could put some sort of codicil on that has to be shared between them, because it will be stored where? At the Taliban Library.
new building. I'll take that as said, councillor. Any further discussion around this one? Around both of them, sorry, there's a total of omitted to cover those two things. Categories, that's right, sorry. There is none, councillor Law. Roundtree closes the debate.
Yep.
All right, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Carried with 6 councillors. Councillor Arthur voting against it. Councillor Coleman abstained. The rest of the councillors voted for it. It's carried. Sorry, that sounds complex. So, councillors, the balance of the items are the Coorong Cottage Industries, Lake Albert Golf Club, the Meningi Teas Factory Museum, Peak Community Centre, Canalpin District Agricultural and Horticultural Society, Tintinara Golf Club, Taylor Bend Bowling Club, Careship Coorong, and the Young Husbands Fishing Club. Is it about the location or just the Young Husbands? Right.
No, it's the location.
It's the location of it. I read the submission. I couldn't get it out. That is the group which council, if they're happy, someone to move, they'd be granted that money as they requested. Councillors Yench and Gill. Councillor, yeah, you want to speak?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I think they're a good spread across the district. They encompass a lot of good and helpful events, etc. that communities need under the current circumstances. It's a healthy thing to do. So, fully support.
Thank you. Councillor Hill, you want to speak?
I'd just like to commend the community groups on I looked at all the applications, they're very comprehensive, well written, and I commend them on the application.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak for or against that motion? Closing, councillor. Close. Thank you. Councillor, we're all voting on this one. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors, for that. Move to council policies. Item 11. Move that on block, can we? As per the recommendation, councillor Roundtree is moving.
Councillor Rangel has a question.
Ask my question.
So my question is, in the document, it says council retains the responsibility for risk management and for determining the appropriate level of risk that Coorong District Council being set. My question is, how will elected members be advised of risk situations, their causes and proposed remedies? So will we as a group get information about that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we have an informed gathering legislator to show you how we have a risk register to advise you all of all the risks and how we go through it. I think would be nice to keep you updated with all of that. It's very operational and risk being, night time people can see a complementary motion. That's been a risk. So it just varies from strategic risk to operational risk. But we are, I don't remember what date we've got our gathering to show you strategic things we're working on and the operation. And from there you get the picture of how we're doing it. Is it?
So to move that through, Ms. Rose, how, of it, we're taking responsibility for risk management, how will we keep abreast of anything that happens that we want to be aware of?
What we can do is, once we do the workshop, council, we can then show you, as part of that workshop, will be risk register, and for example, take cyber risk. So generally with each risk identified, and there are some big ticket ones that are fairly common to most local government, we will identify the risk and then put it through a risk framework to say that the risk is high. And if we put these mitigation strategies in, so for cyber risk, it will be training for staff, then we will lower the risk, but there will always be a risk attached to most things. And so when we present to you that sheet of risk, if you want us to bring it back to council, then we will, but we can do that. But generally, it's a working document that as risks come up, COVID is particularly good one. So we went through and said, what are the risks? And sometimes it's do nothing, quite through to you can mitigate, never generally to 100% because you're only identifying the big risk. And then what is the appetite for the council to accept that risk? So the workshop will work you through each of those processes, and then you can decide as a council whether what the next step is. Do you want to endorse those risks? That's fairly unusual. It's more about your visibility of the life.
So my question for you, Mr. Mayor, more relates to ongoing. So as we go through the years and risks change, more things happen or they don't happen, how often is council, like, about we're carrying that burden, how often do we be updated as to, you know, council experience these risks and we mitigate them in this way? Or is it just the one-off block and we just assume you know what you're doing? Or do we get some monthly report that says there were no risks to council?
What we could do through there is we could bring that, say, back on a 6-monthly basis. We probably wouldn't review it any more than once it's there and this foundational document in place. We would probably only review the risks one at least, and Rob's in the background, he'll tell me if I'm right or wrong, but probably no more than twice a year. But then there may be a trigger for something that actually changes, and we might say, well, we've got to really review this risk now because something in the environment's changed.
Would we be advised of that?
Maybe yes or maybe no, depending on what it was, councillor.
Right.
But something as big as COVID, we might come back to you and say, we have a risk around this that we can't mitigate. We're probably more inclined to tell you we can't mitigate and what's your exposure to that.
That's probably where I'm heading.
Yeah.
We need to be advised of council and exposure, so we are aware of the exposure.
Yeah, Rob.
So you mean,
I was just going to add the audit, the risk committee, I guess, is the level as well. So they'll also make recommendations that something comes out of the register, and that they'll go right into inform council of this and, you know, what are the mitigation strategies and that. So that, I guess that's their role as well.
and that'll come to the minutes from that committee come here.
So long as the risk and audit committee get the information. Yeah, so if it's going through there, then we will get it through here.
Yes, correct.
Councillor Taylor, are you going to move the recommendation?
I'll take a look at that.
You got a question too? That's all right. So I'm going to, sorry, stop. I'm going to take Councillor Roundtree as moving the motion.
Yes, I'm happy to move the motion.
Does anyone else want a second before Councillor Taylor asks the question? Councillor Hill, thank you. Councillor Taylor, a question.
I can't see anything in here, Mayor, regarding lessons learned and continuous process improvement. Is there an intention to add lessons learned and continuous process improvement? Because should a risk mature or identification of a risk at a later stage, and the risk matures and there's an overrun cost or whatever it is, surely the council needs to or start the process change or system change or whatever it is in order to not have that happen again. So the reason I haven't spoken if there is in here for lessons learned to be captured and therefore to build that into a process of continuous improvement.
I'll attempt to answer your question if I understand. A very good example, I think, is what Councillor Arthur brought up before about our computer system. So there's a risk in them at the moment in terms of what we've got. So the lessons learned is that we know that there are risks, and we know that they result in information that we have to manually look at quite intensely. The mitigation of that risk is a new computer system. So in terms of lessons learned, we know the lesson learned is that we need a new system, one that is more fit for purpose. And so the mitigation is that we will purchase a new system. Have I captured what you're asking?
Is that explicit in the document? Is that explicit in the
I don't think we did.
Through Mr. Mayor, our risk register has, I can't tell you how many columns, but it has a traffic light system. So if this is rated as a high risk, what we need to put in to reduce that down to a low risk. And then we've got a follow-up monitor process that goes with that. Just in relation to this document, Rob has spent quite a bit of time on working on this to get it up to date, and we have improved it from what was first considered. We improved the matrix that's in there, and we actually worked on and designed the spreadsheet, which is the register, which we will be presenting to you, to make it actually a really good working document that we can actually refer to and update as the risks change, as the risks generally decrease once we address them. Once they're identified, we address them, then that reduces the risk from red, for example, to the green line.
So a question, what you're saying is that let's take, for example, let's take the Christmas parade as an example. I'm working with whoever, or as far as council is concerned, risks are identified regarding the Christmas parade. One of those risks matures, so it was expected to be a medium range, but actually it was possibly a red light, falls into your red light category. The risk matured. How does that go forward for next year's risk management process in order to ensure that, apart from just adding it as a new risk, it's an identifiable lesson learned, which then just, are you saying that it just then populates next year's processes and added potential risk?
So we provide comments. The risk register has comments attached. I know Rob's moving back there. Do you want to speak to this, Rob?
I was going to say, I mean, our process, this process is not just a standalone process either. Yes, from risk management perspective, but when things do come up off the radar that we're not aware of, that'll initiate another review to make sure that our systems are built and learned from. So whether, I guess, like from a smaller perspective, if there's an incident from WHS perspective, obvious same principle applies, we would review our system and go, well, okay, where did it fail, or where do we need to fill the gap? So the same applies in there, and our risk register helps build that, and from memory, the ELT, the technical every quarter we actually go through that and make sure so we can identify issues, learn from them. So that's all part of our, I think there is one of the guidelines does take us through, I think, the sort of plan B check type scenario where it's identified risk review, that sort of thing. So, yeah.
So maybe it's a dynamic process, Councillor, and so risk matures in your language, which means it's come to fruition and it's either better or worse than what we predicted based on whatever happened at the time. Then that would be a trigger to review the risk register if we're going to repeat, for your case, of an event next year, to say, well, we know that the weather was predictable and it turned out as planned, but next year the weather may not be predictable. It's an ongoing process. So when you use the term continuous improvement, that's what you do when we review each of the risks on that regular basis. What's changed? What might change the level of that risk? What is the things that we can control? What are the things we've learned from the past? What are the things that in the future we think might impact on that list again? So we certainly can put a couple of sentences around continuous improvement if that's where you think.
Just the lessons learned led to continuous improvement. It's just that it's not written down, it's a part of the process which is not that captured. And I can't see it explicitly explained in the document. So I just, coming from that background, it's just another step where we can't bypass it. So it's rather than an assumption that that would be done, we sort of derived at the document itself, the process, just to add that extra step so that it's not. Because they really lead to a comprehensive overview of how you do your process, how you drop things off. It's really just to have this document anyway is really good. To have an emphasis on risk is excellent. It's been a long time coming. It's just that final debate.
So you may, Councillor, if you can send me an email about where you want that particular sentence, we'll actually add it. From the Chamber's point of view, I'm not sure if it changes the endorsement of the document or not, but we can just enhance those couple of last sentences.
So, Councillor, in the risk framework document, page 11 and 29 on 4.6, continuous improvement, maintain and improve the value of risk management for the organisation. Council will monitor and adapt its risk management framework with a view to continually improving the suitability, adequacy, and effectiveness of the risk management process. You can build on that.
Yes.
Thank you. You have a mover and a seconder of this. Councillor Raj, you want to speak to the motion? Councillor Hill, any other councillors for or against speaking to that recommendation in 3 parts? There's none, you'll get close, councillor. I'll put the motion as it stands there. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. We move on to item 12. The recommendation around the Audit and Risk Committee meeting held there to receive the minutes on the 6th of October. Councillors Roundtree and Wildman, seconding. Respected councillor. Any discussion around those minutes, councillors? Being none, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. Number 2, Pangaringa and a Garden Committee minutes, the 30th of September. Councillor Yan. Seconder, please. Councillor Ling. Any discussion around those minutes? Councillors, Councillor Roundtree.
The general question for this committee and other section 41 committees, I just note they have an action list of items where it says things are outstanding. Will we ratify yet how those items on section 41 committee minutes get picked up by council?
That's what you meant. We do have a process of picking them up, and I asked exactly the same question. They all are in progress, so we will endeavour to. We can't change the minutes of the actual committee, but if there's an update from the committee when we give this report to council, we can give an update. Great.
Okay, councillor closed. Thank you. So that is that we received those minutes. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. Agenda item 13.1 corporate and community corporate. Item 1, variability, climate variability policy position statement. Councillor Yin.
Now, firstly, I'd like to move with one minor addition.
You've got the floor.
And that is the final paragraph where it states council will, I would like to insert, take a proactive approach to facilitate the best options for the benefit of our communities to minimise, then therefore it carries on, to minimise the likely impact.
Councillor, could you read that again so we can capture it?
So, as from the top of that paragraph, council will, which is already there, adding in, take a proactive approach to facilitating the best options. Best options for the benefit of our communities, to minimise, and then it carries on with the original paragraph.
Will we capture it?
Yes.
Wait till this becomes clear.
Then I comment further was,
Is it, this is in the lead part of the last paragraph.
correct. It doesn't alter the intent overall. This now basically states that we are taking a proactive role rather than being reactionary to the information we're given. So it may be an opportunity for yourself to lobby on this community's behalf or something, rather than just we sit back and take it. We are participants. This council is a lead body within this community, which is what we must do, but it not exposing us to any out of pocket necessarily, other than becoming a proactive community.
Now, is everyone aware that that's in the last paragraph? CC2. Councillor Roundtree,
Sorry,
are you seconding?
no, I already,
Well, perhaps Councillor Lang. Councillor Lang.
Yeah.
Sorry, so Councillor Roundtree.
we possibly suspend proceedings to talk about this a little bit further.
Can do that with you. So how many minutes would you like, councillors? That's the case. I'll give it. We'll suspend, leave the meeting. Everyone agrees to suspend the meeting for 10 minutes to discuss this more broadly. If we do a motion there, that's fine. 10 minutes from 3:24.
So through Mr. Mayor, the last paragraph here, that last paragraph is council will consider the likely impacts of climate change. I think the word change needs to be variability to make it the rest of the document. But I would also say that the effects of climate change are different, obviously, in every region you go to. For instance, as an olive grower, we haven't had enough hot days and we've had too much. So, from our perspective, we need way more hotter days for our spring flowering, and the cherry growers and the apple growers and nearly everyone I speak to in horticulture would say we're having the opposite effect of what people are saying. So my point is, not everybody in this community agrees wholeheartedly with some of the sentiments, and I think we need to, as a council, probably take a more generic but less prescriptive approach to the wording of this, because it doesn't come a one-size-fits-all situation. So I had actually come up with some things like steer clear of talking about projections and things like that, and where it says the second paragraph, or the third paragraph, is that our region is part of the Murray Basin and climate predictions indicate average temperatures will continue to increase. We wish, we hope, and more hot days and warm spells. I don't know whether we should actually talk about that in this document, because it is a projection, and And the weather is fickle and people predict anything with weather, so I don't think it should be in our statement. We predict anything.
Okay,
Project.
we've got three councillors in this order, Taylor, Hill and go to councillor. No, it's not your call, it's my call.
So.
Sorry, councillor Hill, if I didn't see your hand up longer.
I think that's too, with respect, I think the definition is too prescriptive. So I like the original wording, which is we'll consider proactive approach to managing spending money. So to be proactive, who's going to be proactive? Is that would be proactive? So council, the paragraph which is council acknowledges in respect to scientific evidence-based assessment. I agree. Council does need to use the best science available on the day. But you've actually just listed one here, and I'm sure there are many. So it depends on where you sit. Either side of the fence or on the fence as to which report perhaps that you would look into. So I'm not quite sure that actually putting that report and referencing that report in here it covers everything that needs to be covered. So perhaps the staff will consider removing it. And also the list. So the effect of climate variability across the district, I absolutely agree. Wider community having to adapt farming practices and lifestyles, I absolutely agree with that as well. However, this year may be one of our best farming. It's actually regarding the so increased frequency and intensity of heat waves. What about increased frequency and intensity of colder temperatures? We're on schedule to have a cold winter this year. Increased average temperature. I just think by putting the list down, we can be missing out other things. So rather than list them, because once you create a list, people just look at the list. They don't look at what they don't know. They don't know what they don't know. So they, in putting a list in there, we may be missing out. So, on this. So there's a lot of assumptions in there are increased. And it depends on the time scale that we look at as well. So I'm not too happy about doing the list. Stop. Thank you.
Okay, councillor Hill.
On my walks around the new, I've been doing lots of them. I listen to podcasts, and all of the scientific education podcasts. And a quote came out, stood out for me, which is don't confuse weather with climate change. We're discussing individual items about farming that in terms of weather, and climate change is based together. There are many reasons why we should consider climate change in terms of increased emergency risk with bushfires, and that can inform as simple as informing what you need your lab to do in terms of work in the district to assist farmers with drought-resistant crops and things like that. So there's a lot of reasons why we should be concerned ourselves with the climate change. So I am a bit concerned that the word minimise is in there, because we may not want to minimise, we might be able to, there's another word for it, plan for it, mitigate, as opposed to minimise. So for the council to further check with that word, but yes, weather is not climate change, weather is weather.
Thank you, councillor Yash.
Thank you, Smith. I concur with Councillor Hill. Weather is weather. I'm happy if minimise is removed and mitigate goes in. Yes, the list does have a lot of things that aren't necessarily linked to climate change. It's a generic list. I believe it's the most significant risk we face as a district is water issues, and that is particularly where the climate change aspects come in for us. The other big risk with climate change or variation is how science and political can become adversaries.
in the sense that a political expediency or some scientific result may come to a head. I understand that we're going to get warmer, we have warmer weather, we have dry weather. Most people in this chamber have not seen China then, for instance, with its 100 to 150 mil in an afternoon. It will come. It's been 23 years since we've had that. Councillor Foreman, I think you were here, potentially with the last. The event that we have at the moment is a La Nina, and I believe these events are more likely to give us that summer rain when this comes. Do that. So, yeah, rainfall, weather temperatures are, yes, they are all relevant, but they are things that we cannot control. But we do need to be on the right foot, because I believe on the biggest risk we face in the council region is the political masters of the day who will see us as an expedient loss, as many people in New South Wales already view that any water that goes out the Murray Mountains is waste. We face all sorts of issues, particularly from the eastern states, in a political nature. We need to be aware that our political masters do not use us in this matter. So, yeah, be on the front foot. This council may choose to be proactive in a public sense of championing certain issues to do with water, lakes, whatever. But it's not about the weather. No, it's not.
We've got a few more minutes to go. That's three.
I'm going to propose an amendment to this eventually, but I just wanted to respond to the comment about the weather and the climate. If we're not talking weather, then that whole list can be removed. We're not discussing weather, because they're all weather-related events. If we're talking climate variability, let's keep the wording consistent. I don't believe sticking to one set of reports should be specified when there are many different reports available that talk about climate variability. You don't want to talk about projections or anything prescriptive. And I think council staying informed of what's happening around this is a very good idea, because you never know the opportunities and business lie. But I think we can condense that all up, and I would propose an amendment when we're out of this session.
Question.
Yes.
The report quoted, the IPCC, is that an accepted official report that everyone refers to, or is that, yeah, so other. Like,
Miles has joined. Rodney's going to deal with some stuff in the process in a minute.
That's probably the most regular formal reference used by government and, at all levels. Most frequent one.
So it's not just an arbitrary report.
No,
some people.
it essentially is all the scientists in the world coming together and producing a report on climate change, and is the most respected global report that you can refer to.
Councillor Arthur, I think the Amelia from.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I'd just like to make a comment. This was bandied around the work we've been on the weekend, and the comment was, what right has the council to make these sort of statements? The council are there to represent the ratepayers, not their own individual personal beliefs. So I cannot work out why we've been, putting this sort of thing up to the councils. Because as an elected member, I can't vote for it because it's not what ratepayers. So I'll be voting against it because, I don't believe that we as elected members, without public consultation, can be taking any line in the sand or loose. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I'm going to please stop the open session and revert back to meeting procedure. There is a mover and the second. The mover has spoken to the motion. The seconder has not at this stage. Doesn't want to at this stage.
I can.
Well, it's up to you, but councillors would be aware that the councillors may move an amendment. Anyway, we'll let you go.
I just believe that instead of wishy-washy, council will consider, which leaves them sitting on the fence. We need to be seen as leading and being proactive in recognising and mitigating issues with regard to climate change that affect our community.
Okay, so I'm going to ask for an amendment. I think there might be one.
Amendment.
So you're moving an amendment, Councillor Brown?
I'd like to make an amendment.
Oh, sorry, can I just hold you there? So we want to address this. Miles, can you just address that group of subjects there and how that come about in this report?
So in order to, so we had a workshop, and from the workshop there was an indication that we would come back with a position statement that you could consider, and that's where we're at today. So in order to come back with a position statement, I turned my mind to other councils in South Australia and what they have made in terms of statements. And I wanted to find a statement that was as close as possible to the sentiment that we heard in the workshop. And that is what I've landed with. In my mind, the first paragraph is important, and the final paragraph is extremely important. In between, yeah, I could let that go. I could let that go. But the most important thing is one, the recognition, and two, that we're willing to consider. Remember we talked about our land use over councils that do it, and I think that was probably the resounding feeling we got back from the workshop. We apply our lens to what we do, and we consider then the potential impact on variability. So I've tried to come as close as I could to a statement that reflected that workshop. Noting again that if the next step is to include this type of language then on the website and the actions we've already undertaken, and then also reference it in the community vision.
Yeah, well, so the first question is, in that last paragraph, which is some contention that word climate change could be climate variability as a different word.
You said that.
So, where I said it, what do you,
Right.
you think?
Yeah, that was important. Language, you know, you got to be comfortable with language.
So long as we understand that prior to the amendment, which is the current, sorry, prior to the motions, current motion, I think, Councillor Lynch, in that particular, I think, likely impact of climate variability, were you happy with that? I'm happy with that, Mark. I do. Your amended motion altogether, yes. I'm going to return to Councillor Roundtree, who has the floor in relation to the proposed amendment.
So I would like the amendment to read the first paragraph that says the effects of climate variability are being felt across our district with our environment and holders in the wider community having to adapt farming practices and lifestyles, full stop. So you just copy that first paragraph.
We can't, sorry, we just can't probably refer it to.
Oh, sorry.
Keep talking while they're writing.
Rightio. Then I'd like just to leave out the list, and I don't think we need to make references to the other two paragraphs, and finish with the last paragraph that says council will consider the likely impacts of climate variability. Do I need to wait to make that up? Yep, I do. All right.
After lifestyles, you
Full stop.
Right.
Correct. And then the last paragraph would be council will consider the likely impacts of climate variability for all our current and planned activities, whilst applying principles of sustainability and adaptation in decision making. Then we skip to the last sentence, which says information will be published and regularly updated on council's website, informing the community of actions being taken by council in response to the existing and likely impacts of climate variability within our district. It's shorter, it's more succinct, and it says what it needs to say.
Effectively, councillor, you'd want all of the first paragraph, 3 lines, basically, and percentage of the last paragraph, none of the rest.
None of the rest.
None of the rest. We should speak to that now.
I feel that the existing amendment, the existing motion is actually more descriptive in the fact that it's got more words in it, and some of it's just not necessary in there. So I feel more comfortable as a councillor with a shorter version of that position statement.
Okay, councillor Taylor, you had your hand up for a long time.
I'll second
You're seconding. What is an amendment? Wish to speak to it, councillor?
Yes, so I think the shortened version is, it just says exactly what needs to be said. In that, you don't have to, and I do thank Miles for taking the extensive time with that produced it. And I'm sure there's been a lot of thought gone into it. I'm just wary of lists in where we include, it's going to be debatable as to what's included and what isn't. And also in naming any kind of report necessarily, just so that we're open to including or looking at or analysing any report and data set in the future rather than descriptive by it. And I think that just the other one is good to have, but it's not necessary as far as the positioning statement goes. So hence I've supported it.
Thank you, councillors. It's open for debate. This is an amendment. You speak to the amendment. Not the government officer anymore, but she's gone. You've got to then can't go on speaking to the motion. Is that right there? You speak for or against an amendment, you will no longer, if the amendment fails, go to speak to the motion. That's correct. But councillor Lang, knowing that,
Thank you.
we're on the amendment.
I believe it's important for the second paragraph of the original motion to be left in there in regard to, it's important for us to acknowledge and respect the scientific evidence base, assessment, etc. We just can't leave that out, I don't believe. And there's another statement about being within the Murray Valley Basin, actually, just the basin. Climate projections indicate temperatures on the increase. Definitely is correct. So we can't leave out those two paragraphs in my opinion.
Okay, anyone else speaking for or against the amendment? Okay, councillor Roundtree will close this debate. Okay, councillors, is everyone fully aware that it's a shortened version of the original motion? In effect, everyone fully aware on the screen and can see what they would be voting for. Therefore, I'll put the amendment. All those in favour? Those against? The amendment is carried when we come to the motion. The amendment was carried with 5 councillors voting for it, being councillors Qualman, Arthur, Taylor, Roundtree, Simmons, and councillors voting against it was councillors Hill, Yench, and Lang. It's become the motion. The amendment has become the motion, councillor. We've taken to a second amendment, but I have only got 3 councillors that wish to have a second amendment. There's been no second amendment. Is there any discussion around, any further discussion around this at all? That's a good question.
I'm not asking for anything.
Are you asking for another amendment?
No.
No. So questioning is asking the you can speak, councillor, yes, to the what is now the motion. It's now the motion, Mr. Mayor.
Quite frankly, I'm disappointed with the motion. I believe it is sadly very lacking in detail. Yeah, I can understand why it is what it is, but I don't believe it really covers the needs of the total district. I think it meets the perception of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any others? Councillor Hill, certainly.
I find the wording of the amendment weak, and I do find the comment that this is a personal belief offensive. This is not a personal belief of a few people. This is a fairly well established scientific opinion by thousands of scientists. You always find dissenters in the scientific community, but the overwhelming evidence and the overwhelming sentiment that we have serious implications coming from inaction on climate change. And while we can't do anything as a council to change that, we need to consider there are things that we do and can do that will consider does not cover. So if we'll consider had a actual action after it, then I'd be more inclined to support the motion. But at the moment, it is very weak and it doesn't mean anything basically except just to say that, yeah, we'll think of it.
Councillor Warman and three councillors now motion some form.
It's a question, Mr. Mayor, and maybe through you to the CEO. It actually says a statement. Now, does that mean we're making a statement, then later on we make another one, we change it? Or what? You know, this actual statement, it's not an actual action, it's a statement. Can you help me explain that, please? What you mean by statement?
That's the way I read it. There's a statement of where our position is at the present time.
So it could be like a live response from us in years down the track or 6 months down the track. We might put another statement in, correct?
Yes, we might. Notice a motion at any time you like, councillor.
Yeah.
Perhaps I just want to say, I think on the closing stage, that if someone was to ask me as the presiding member of this council, what is council's position on climate change up to hopefully about 2 minutes' time, I didn't really have a position apart from my own. Quite honestly, I was unaware that there was a policy of it.
Because, Mr. Mayor, if I may, it's the evolving.
That's right. Yeah. Right. So at least having this statement, council does have a position. That's the point I would make. I was dreading the day someone actually asked me what our position was. I may know what I mean. Councillor, amendments become a motion. Amendments become the motions.
The amendment is now the motion.
Now the motion. So I need to put that. Who moved that motion?
Councillor.
Sorry, I'm sorry. Stop. Members become the motion, so I put it again. That's as simple as that.
Yeah, we just go again with the same thing.
Below amendment.
That's how I understand it.
You
So
would
I
be
move it again.
speaking again, councillor Taylor. I hope you've got a question.
No, I wasn't, I'm just unclear of it, but yes, I'm unclear of the process.
The members become the motion. I will simply put this again. Simple as that. All those in favour of it as it is now? Those against? Carried. Carried. 5 votes to 3 in the same form as the previous, in the amendment got up, please. So we do have a position, weak as it may be for some. Thank you. The councillors want a break or not? So perhaps, I'm noticing Rex is over there looking at me. For 10 minutes till 4 o'clock, please, as a short break.
Don't know. Sorry, Ash.
You do? Okay. Christine, we only work on unresolved parallel legislation. No, Smart people at the front.
Smarter than anything else.
I'm well aware on Zoom. Thank you. We resume at 4:03. Councillors, to item number 2, audio visual upgrade project for this particular room, the chambers. Councillor Hill, removing that. Thank you. Councillor Taylor is the next one. Are you seconding that?
No.
Councillor Hill, you want to speak to it at all?
Oh, right.
You'll wait. Councillor Taylor?
Through your long time coming, really. When we started this process, I don't know how long it's going to. So this just adds, this just sort of concludes the original intent of the original motion, almost probably years ago now, certainly months ago. So really a step forward.
Okay, I'm going to ask them to just give a bit more information around this proposal.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So through discussions with the Mayor, he asked what it would cost to put a second camera in up here. So the proposal presented to you, we just tried to get it as best we could in a decent price range rather than fully over the top. And since then, we've looked in at getting that second camera. So there will be one up there and one this way. An additional camera control box to join the two cameras to a single image and installation is a further $5,354. Council may wish to consider to include that within this proposed budget review, or the one camera will work, but it will just be facing this way.
In other words, you get to stay off camera, chair this table, under this proposal, this stage. That could be added later at any stage.
It could be added
no
later.
great cost.
That was our thinking. It can be retrofitted, but if council, I just thought I'd bring it to your attention that if you wish, that can be included now for $5,350
On top.
on top.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, does it make any difference to that cost if we do it whilst we're doing everything else, or is it going to turn out to be extra if we have to bring the crew back to do it later?
Look, I apologise. I haven't looked into that fully. I would expect there will be travelling, etc. with that, but the actual purchase wouldn't change.
What else do you want to say?
No,
So the report alludes to you'll be able to control when you're on mic or off. And I'd probably think the council needs to have a discussion around that, because this is a live room, it's a public chamber, and I can see some of us will forget to press the button when they want to speak. And I'd much rather if it's a live meeting, it is live, so I can hear all of your little quips when I listen to the tape or whatever later. Because at the moment, I don't hear it. So that's really a policy decision as much as part of the meeting procedure. It's not part of this decision process. Sorry, I'm just in a general questions. So I'll take councillors Ramsey and Taylor again.
So my question was about the comment around how much it was going to cost in staff time. So I think at some point we probably do need to make a decision around whether we keep the meetings at 2 o'clock, 2 to 5. And I suppose now that we're looking at going to this step, and people can watch it later when they get home, or be involved in council on the comfort of their own lounge rooms, sticking to a 2 to 5 p.m. would actually reduce the burden on staff costs for overtime hours. Is that correct? So yeah, I think at some point we will need to look at whether we lock into remaining 2 to 5. It's certainly nice not to get home at 11 o'clock.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if that's okay. We were going to bring that back to council to discuss moving forward, timings of meetings. But we're just waiting to see what happens with this emergency declaration first. Yeah.
Councillor Taylor.
Through you, Max, my twin here, who's just stolen my thunder again.
Sorry.
But I also wanted to add to that regarding keeping the meetings at 2 p.m. To have some kind of revised public method for submitting questions, because we remember that all of those people who eventually hopefully will be going back to work will be at work. So we should not be encouraging them to zoom in, stream in while we are broadcasting while they're at work. So some improved way for them to get questions to the councillors, taking into consideration the fact that they may be working time. And also taking into consideration what you said for increased costs. So it would make sense to up the budget now rather than to revisit it with add-ons and extra staff costs, travel and everything. So everything will be sorted out in one go. So would that be by an amendment?
That could be
Yeah.
a variation to the motion. So if the mover, the seat leaver, meaning if the mover and seconder agree, you can change that to 25,000.
So I'm still just in a bit of a open general discussion around that. You may note that this was not in our normal budget this year. Councillor Arthur, are you indicating something?
Yeah, I had a good talk with Sean about it, and he explained the setup to me the other day, anyway. And he was very keen on the system. He explained to me how he looked through different sorts of system, wireless system, hardcore system. This was something he came up with within a budget without going, if we want to spend a bit more money, he's only willing to do that. He can spend a lot more if we want to, but I think what he's come up with will be quite sufficient.
Okay.
With the extra, I'm quite happy to leave the extra camera out and just leave the stars up the front on the camera.
I think that needs to be that.
Oh, he's joking.
Oh,
So I've got a, so my first question is, there is a divergence of views around an additional camera for approximately 5,500. Councillor Hill, you're the mover. You just want to stick with your motion at this stage?
Can I make a comment?
Yeah, you reserve your position. Let's say you make a comment.
Okay, so the feedback I'm receiving from people who are watching the live feeds and also the recording is that it's not just about whether they can see us, it's whether they can hear us as well. So we need to make sure that any microphones that are included in this are of good quality, and also remind council they need to keep their voices up and not let it drop down when there's recording on. We just need to make sure that whatever we're spending the money on is going to deliver to the people who cannot come to meetings. Because keep in mind that, you know, there could be a second wave of COVID again, so that, you know, it is going to restrict the ability of people to come to meetings. And I do concur with the views of Councillor Roundtree and Councillor Taylor. Does that make us triplets? I'm not sure. But yeah, we do have to perhaps review the time that we spend doing time that we start these meetings. Perhaps it will be an opportunity to go back to a 2 to 5 regime, if that's what everyone thinks is reasonable. But yes, I am happy to amend the amount.
It's your call, councillor.
Yeah, I'm happy to make the amendment that.
Can we add the figure really accurately, please?
Yes. Yeah, better to spend the money now and get it right now.
Second is supporting your, so is that a reasonably accurate figure, 25,000?
Yes, it is.
So it's been varied a little bit. And that was the motion still covered because the money there for that.
That's right.
So councillor, so that you're happy with that?
I'm happy with that.
Any other councillors now wish to speak for or against that motion? Councillor Squalman, you worried the camel won't be on you, or?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You know, I'm scared of this IT stuff, but I think it is important, and I totally agree with what the fellow councillors have said. And Councillor Hill said a point before is getting our meetings out to everybody via electronically. Because sometimes, as you're well aware, we used to go to various locations and have a council meeting which involved the staff moving everything and cost and everything, where now you've got electronic stuff, you can just dial us in and away you go. And I'm happy with the other camera to 5,000 whatever to go on top. And I think the microphone idea is a good idea in the sense that people will be able to hear us properly. And Mr. Mayor, that means too, we'll have microphones, and then of course, if an elected member can't attend a council meeting, they will zoom in as well. Would we still going down that track?
Under the COVID rules, we can have Zoom in councillors.
Only during COVID though.
Well, if that changes, and who knows, then I would believe we'll probably revert to the original act. Saying that, I'd say that this local government organisations are probably seeing the opportunity for that, but I know if Councillor Land was here, she quite enjoyed the fact we have to be in the room for the meeting. And I can tell you as the chair, it's quite awkward to look at a magical person up there, because it's just it's a different eye process to watch, actually. So, but yeah, no, I'll take on board what you're saying. And we note in this proposal, there's 2 or 3 walk-around mics. So before in that debate, we had Rob speaking from the back. No one would have heard that probably. And so, yeah. So I think the proposal's quite sound, technically. It's really going to spend the money now, probably the argument. I'm picking up that's very likely. You finished?
I was going to say something else.
Sorry.
That's all right. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone wants to speak for or against what is a slightly variated motion, just to take the amount of the figure out to 25,000 should be dealt with in budget review 1. Any further debate? You will close it, Councillor Hill. Thank you. So I will put that motion. All those in favour? Against? It's carried unanimously. Can that happen by next week? So we can see them all?
That's right.
See them all?
Certainly try.
Should be the only one. 13.3. Where are we? Report on the financial results of as at the 30th of June. And we welcome Rex Mooney, our consultant, on up there somewhere. Where are you, Rex? Stop. To help us with this. So this is item 3. Is a recommendation. The council received the Audit and Risk Committee's advice that it is reviewed and discussed the report of financial results for the year ending 30th of June 2020. It is compared the variances to the adopted budget and considers the 1920 financial statements are reasonable and accurate. Moved, I hope, Councillor Taylor. Thank you. Is there a second? Just for the purpose of debate. Councillor Roundtree. Welcome, Rex. Do you wish to briefly outline the issues in this report?
Thank you, and good afternoon to everybody. It's good to be here today. The report on the financial results, that's the last report in the strategic financial reporting cycle, and what it does is it compares the original budget that council adopted to the actual audited statements and explains any variances. So I'll just quickly go through a few things. If you have a look at the ratios, you can see that in each instance, now you've got your 3 key financial indicators. So that's on page CC9, I think. I'm not sure what page that is, CC9, yeah. That, if you have a look, the adopted 1920 column compared to the financial year end 2020 column. So the adopted column was the original budget and the financial year end 2020 was the final result. So for all 3 of the ratios, you can see a better performance than what was originally budgeted for, which is a good thing. And in particular, council ended up operating in surplus instead of in deficit as it was initially forecast. Okay, so the other thing to note, you'll see that there's an adjusted net financial liabilities ratio of 25% compared to the reported ratio of 14%. Okay, the difference reflects the fact that we've received 1.6 million worth of financial assistance grants in June 2020. Now, if that hadn't been received, well then we'd have had a higher level of net financial liability, so effectively less cash in the bank by the tune of $1.6 million. And so that ends up being about 9% if you're comparing that as a percentage of your operating revenue. So before I move on, has anyone got any questions about the key financial indicators?
They look like Councillor Roundtree has.
Hi Rex, Mr. Mayor. With that 1.6 million, it was split into two and half put into the 1920 financial year and then the rest into 2021. Is that how? So what would that be? So what I can see is if we were then to take the $800,000 out of that year, we only really have a surplus of 121,000, which is still better than a 376 deficit. But is that a more accurate way of looking at it? Because the funds will be expended in this financial year that we're in now, wouldn't they?
All right. Well, in relation to that, so what you're looking at there is the operating surplus ratio of 5.7 compared to the adjusted ratio of 5.1%.
Yeah.
So you see there's very little difference there. Now that's because in June 2019, 50% of the financial grants were prepaid for that year as well. So effectively, the two prepayments cancel each other out and you get pretty well the equivalent of a full year's payment. Now, at some stage in the future, the federal government will short pay 50%. So in that particular year, you'll see a big swing between the two calculations. Okay, so effectively, what the problem is we're required to report it as income in the year that we receive it. So we can't store it in the balance sheet and transfer it through to next year when the actual money's spent. Does that answer what your question was?
When you said that, when you said that the previous year's money was split as well and ended up in this financial year, so it's pretty much a full year's amount.
That's right.
Fairly consistent year in, year out.
Yeah, that's right. At the moment it is, but at some stage it won't be when the federal government decides not to prepay it. And in that year, there'll be a difference between those two ratios. But you see, what those two ratios, what ratio one, the operating surplus ratio, that's looking at a specific period of time, whereas your net financial liabilities is a calculation that includes transactions over a range of periods. So it's got a starting and a closing balance.
Yeah.
And so that's why you get a variance here, because effectively we've received $1.6 million in advance, and the previous $1.6 million that we got is already in the opening balance. So therefore, you'll see a large variance in the net financial liabilities that you won't see in your operating surplus ratio. Yeah. I know this sounds pretty confusing, but it's you know, if I had a whiteboard, I could work through some examples to show you, but effectively it's to do with the operating surplus ratio reports on a 12-month period, whereas your net financial liabilities ratio reports on effectively a rolling period of time over several periods, basically. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Okay.
Any other questions on the ratios? No, well, I'll move on then. So the next thing I want to have a look at is the statement of comprehensive income on CC 11. Now, overall, that's a pretty good result. We're looking at, if you have a look at the operating surplus deficit, we're looking at we budgeted for a $376,000 deficit, but we ended up with a $921,000 surplus. Now, two key factors account for that $1.2 million swing. Now, one of them, you'll have a look at grants and subsidies. You can see that there's a variance, a favourable variance of $604,000. Okay, now that related to some capital grants, which were received for Cooldy and 7 Mile Road, as well as some other grants, but predominantly those ones. Now, you'll see that the money's included in the 5.2 million grant income. But if you were to go down to the expenditure section, there's no additional expenses in there. So that 604,000 basically flows straight through to the bottom line, the operating surplus deficit result, because the actual expenditure relating to those grants are capitalised into the balance sheet and form part of property, plant and infrastructure on the next page. So that's the first reason for the favourable variance of 1.297 million. The next reason is that there's an electricity audit undertaken and council received some fairly significant reimbursements in relation to that. So that obviously couldn't be seen in advance. So the original budget didn't include that, but the final financial statements did. And the other thing is, as we've discussed probably in our budget workshops and at various other times, there were numerous unfilled positions for various periods of time throughout the 19-20 financial year. Now, some of those positions just resulted in savings, whilst a number of those positions were actually backfilled by contracting, and so accordingly, you see employee costs are under budget by 844,000, but materials, contractors, and other expenses are over budget by 439,000. But overall, that's about a $400,000 improvement. So if you look at those 4 items in particular, you can see how the favourable result has come about. So I guess that's all I want to say in relation to that. So are there any questions on the statement of comprehensive income?
Rex, I'm not sure if you can see Councillor Roundtree, so I'm just putting my hand up. Question.
Yeah. That's what you get for another camera.
Yeah, this is really another camera. So just backing up a little bit there, Rex, I just wanted you to confirm. So when you say that we received money in, but it doesn't, the expenditure for that money doesn't show up on the expenditure, it shows up on the balance sheet because it was spent on capital.
That's right.
So
so your rose to recovery funding's the same.
Right.
So like it's one of these anomalies, right? Because it's allowed to happen. My understanding is because eventually it gets depreciated. So a portion of the depreciation charge relates eventually to the income, but again, it's this timing difference thing. But yeah, that's right. That's what happens. But if you look at your road to recovery income, because that can be spent on maintenance projects or capital projects, and it's discretionary how council spends it, it's treated as operating income, even though in reality, most of it's actually spent on capital. And so you've got the income in the income section, but the expenses are not in the operating expenses section, but instead they're in the capital expenses section, which is put into the balance sheet. Is that what you're getting at there?
Yeah, I'm following what you're saying. Is there another way for the income so that it matches? It has to be its operating income.
And then you decide how you've spent it, and that's when it becomes capitalised if it's on capital expenditure.
It's not generally. It's just one of those anomalies of how it's accounted for.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's I can understand it not necessarily making sense.
You talking about Councillor Taylor or Councillor Taylor?
Question for you, Rex. So the depreciation value, how are the depreciation values changed? Because obviously there's been a change in the amount of money coming in for asset renewal, new assets, renewal for roads, etc. How do we make sure that the depreciation reflects the additional spending on those assets?
That's a very good question, and I think if you have a look at the long-term financial plan, there's a section in there where I've got areas that need to be investigated further, and basically information improvements or data improvements made. And one of those areas is in relation to your asset data, which is what's used to calculate your depreciation. And looking at it there, the 4243 budget compared to the 4239 actual is a little bit surprising, really, given that we've had a revaluation. But it's there's quite a large amount of reconciliations and asset registers that underpin the $4.2 million of depreciation, and that's closely looked at by the auditors each year. So I can only assume that that's accurate. But yeah, I take your point that, you know, if you're building, you'd expect all things equal. If you're building new assets of significant dollar value, well, you'd expect your depreciation charge to increase. Likewise, if you're revaluing your assets upwards, you know, to reflect current cost of construction, which is what normally happens, well, you'd expect it to increase. So yeah, it's an interesting question, but it's by far, in my mind, the most estimated figure in the statements, because it's also a non-cash calculation, and in theory, what it's meant to represent is the level of consumption of the assets by the community over the previous 12 months. And so that's a nice sounding statement, but it's got quite a large number of assumptions in the calculation.
So in reality, the better your asset management plan, the better your depreciation schedule.
That's exactly right. And that's and I've identified that in the long-term financial plan as an area that needs to be reviewed and updated and improved. And so I'd expect that over the following 12 months, that's what will happen.
Rex, I'd just like talking about the depreciation. There's been huge fluctuation in the depreciation figures. For example, the transport communication depreciation increased by $139,260 on the master account details. There was reductions in others of $52,000. So it works out about $4,000 difference. There's huge fluctuations there. The other thing is, with the income, how many of the drought $1 million are actually in those figures? So have we received the 2 lots of $1 million?
One in these figures, because they're 1920.
Yep.
There'll be $1 million. Now the government did something a bit strange in that they paid $500,000 from the first drought part and $500,000 from the second. But in reality, it was $1 million.
Right, and what about the $500,000 jobs?
Economic debate. Murray Darling.
Yeah.
No, that's this financial year.
No,
Remember these
the
figures?
last one.
Remember the 30th of June figures?
Yeah.
Yeah. And
That's
we
right,
were,
The 3 projects we have now, we haven't received none of the funds in the year we talked about, 1920, in relation to that.
Yeah, well, that's because, you know, there was not enough money in the grant receipts for the last year. What we did. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Other councillors, you have questions? Where Rex is at? Are we in a position we can vote on the first motion here?
Sorry, I didn't quite hear that.
Just saying, I think you've probably got it covered, Rex.
Okay.
He has a motion, he wants 2 more questions.
Very easy one, probably. In other revenue, $250,000, what was that for? The explanation. CC11.
I'd have to take that one on notice, but if you have a look at the council meeting that contained the draft financial statements, if you've got that handy, note 2 covers the breakdown of the various line items here. So yeah, I really don't know off the top of my head, but we'd have covered that when we looked at the annual financial statements the first time. The purpose of this report here is to just really identify any significant variances from the original budget, rather than get into the what actually makes up the individual numbers, because that's effectively what was handled when we discussed the draft financial statements, which I don't believe ended up changing much from the version that went to council either last month or the month before. I can't recall which one it was. But yeah, I'm sure we could follow that up for you and let you know if you like.
I can find it. Okay.
Other question, councillor, or you?
No, I just realised my second question makes sense financial design.
Doesn't matter, right. Councillors, are we happy so far to vote on item number 3? 3 parts are there in front of you. Is everyone ready? Councillor Taylor will close the vote. Close, thank you. So I'm putting that one there, report of the financial results of the 30th of June 2020. All those in favour? Those against? Carried unanimously. Move on to financial statement certification of the auditor's independence. Item 4. Councillor Taylor, are you moving? Thank you. Councillor Hill is seconding. Fine. Council endorses the presiding member of the Audit and Risk Committee to sign the certification of auditor independence for the inclusion within the annual financial statements for the year ended 30 June 2020. Any council wish to speak to this? Rex, you don't need to speak to this, do you?
No, the next couple of reports are really just effectively acknowledging that, council have taken on board advice from the audit committee or assurances from the audit committee that these things have been looked at.
Okay. Anyone wish to speak to this debate? Council will close it. Thank you. Put them as item 4. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. Item 5, draft financial statements for the year ended 30 June and audit report. Councillor Taylor again. Councillor Roundtree is the seconder. Any discussion around that? Item 5. There being none. I put the motion. All those in favour? Those Councillor Arthur, are you in favour? Yeah, both hands up. I didn't know what was going on. Against? Carried unanimously. Number 6, Audit and Risk Committee Performance Report. The Council will ratify the Audit and Risk Committee Performance Report and for its inclusion in the Council's annual report for 1920. Councillor Hill, thank you for that. Presume you're moving and not asking a question.
No, I'm moving.
Councillor Taylor is the second. Any debate around the subject? Closed. Thank you. Put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously again. Thank you very much, Rex.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
What you done?
See you, Rex.
And everybody have a good afternoon. See ya.
No worries. Thank you. Thank you, councillors. Item number 14, infrastructure and assets report. This is fantastic because there's nothing there. Neil.
Just on that subject, why this is the second time there's been no item? Is that because it's in the information document?
So there is no, through you, Mayor, there is no need or reports that need to come to council after the infrastructure and asset committee meeting in November. There'll be plenty in that part of the document.
Right.
So some of them are just waiting to go through the process before they get into it.
Okay.
And through you, Mayor, what we will do into the future, we're going to think about changing the structure of the actual council agenda in a sense, because there is no need generally to divide it up as we do in departments in terms of the reports to council. They're reports to the whole council from the whole organisation, and the info doc we're thinking about as also as a report into council rather than a separate one where you don't have to accept it. So we will come back to you probably in the December meeting, asking for some changes to make it flow a little better and not have the obvious, when there's no report, in my view, you don't need a page that says there's no report.
Yeah, so it doesn't look crash on.
No.
Yeah.
And it's not because of anything that's happening, it's just that this part of the business is bumping along, and once it goes through the committee, then there will be reports that come out of that will need to come to council.
Yeah, because I think previously there were a whole range of things that came up, and then the month it stopped was when the director was on leave, and then this month I thought we'd see something we didn't, but then I noticed in the information document there seemed to be almost like a quasi INA report in there.
Yeah.
So the director's away. He's part of a long-term project with the region to review the waste disposal of the region. He's one of the leads on that.
Yeah.
On Friday, the regional committee gets some more information around that. Oh, it's while I've got you, I know, see you, Councillor Qualman. So the department, in the last, 18 months approximately, we've received over $5 million through 3 separate streams of federal government assistance. And I think that the department, which carries the burden of spending this money, or the burden or otherwise, is probably just flat out trying to do this at the moment. Councillor Qualman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'm glad Councillor Roundtree raised this because it's been my concern. Everybody would be aware half the money that council raises goes into infrastructure assets, correct? It's a big ticket item, and just beggars belief there's nothing in here. However, this is good that we've got an infrastructure and assets committee coming up, and then we'll get back on the document and seeing we're doing something. I just have I still don't like stuff that sits on the information document. I'd rather see the infrastructure and assets recognised more. I just feel like something so big in council is not being presented appropriately or comprehensively enough.
Thank you. Okay. We're going to move on to the information document. Is there items you wish to bring out of that, Councillor? And perhaps the first one, councillors, invite you, the process of the new Taylor Bend public toilets is there. There's a mock-up, I suppose one call it. Is that roughly meeting people's expectations from where we were at a site meeting some months ago? It's probably, Councillor Taylor, we probably need to say our piece fairly soon.
Any information on whatever those artworks were?
Yes, there was an email.
Yes.
The mosaics.
So they dated back to 2013. They were part of a youth project. My understanding, and I'll have to check again, but Kelly checked in with the artist. They are not finished. And we, I suppose, have to have a look at, and we haven't done this, is to have a look at them to see whether we want to put any effort into having them finished, and just what state they're in. We haven't looked at that yet. But they do date back to 2013 and they're not complete.
So I assume the council allocated the money to this in the first place. I have no idea what they are. And do we need to, do the staff need to look at them for the finalised design?
Through you, Mayor, my understanding was through a youth grant that wasn't connected to council. Council, now I may have this slightly wrong, but I think council was also seeking a youth project of some sort at the time. But it wasn't council money. My understanding was grant money. Now I will make sure that that's the correct information for you. And I don't think from the, and this is assumptions on my part, that the state of the actual artwork probably doesn't lend itself to outside exposure. But we will check. But there's nothing in this design where we couldn't retrofit that type of artwork if we thought it was suitable. In fact, it's probably better if we build them and then put them up if we need to.
So I was quite worried that if we had a grant, then we just, at some point, somebody acquitted our grant and said whatever. So that's quite interesting that we got the money in.
That was in 2013, and I can track back if you want me to, but I'm not sure.
No, it's not needed. The other, do we have any dates for start and completion for any of those projects highlighted in the document?
Steve, the way I read it is it's yet to go to procurement.
It's currently with
procurement. So it'll take some months, but I think there was a time frame in the report there early next year.
And finally, sorry, before Councillor Hill jumps in, the canal swimming pool, is that, do we have any date for completion of that work? Or?
Funding arrangement before the last day of December. But I can see we've got some photos of the pool we couldn't swim in today. So I'm presuming that I see there's a note there that there's something to do with one drain, but my understanding is we have to have it done by that day.
So we're down there in Council Roundtree, correct me if I'm wrong, but the contractors are still confident that they will have it done by
First week in December?
Yeah, I was going to say the first week in December.
Yeah.
They were very confident about that. So
there you go.
But I got more confident than was when you look at what the task is in front of you.
Possibly. It's not for one or lack of supervision at the moment.
So the process is being pushed, and that's why the I&A department under pressure. Councillor Hill and Councillor Lang.
At least one anyway, back to the mosaics.
Mosaics.
Yeah. As long as if we're going to retrofit after the toilets are built, we have to obviously make sure the panels being a mosaic might be quite heavy, so we need to make sure the engineering is going to, if we decide to fix them, that's going to accommodate the weight. But the other thing too is there is no obligation that we need to use them, and once they're being sited and with that deemed to be perhaps not appropriate, that we look for some other decorative artwork or something to put on.
It'll look like. That was your first of the two.
No, that was the two bits.
Two things in one. Thank you, Councillor Lang. It's the information document.
Thank
you. On mosaics, well, I know.
No, the mosaics, we encountered the same problem in our toilets, and if we went ahead with the mosaics there, at Town Event here, I presume that would adopt the same procedure with the second wall. My comment to the information document, there's a number of items in there that are relative to different wards or areas that I believe are significant enough. We should be putting out perhaps a media release or some information going out to Tail topics, Lakelander, covering the areas of interest to the people. This information, the photographs are great, but they're hidden in our information document. Unless the people know they're there, I think it would be better getting out there to the people in the media that we've been discussing, and including in some way these photographs for a media release.
So, my understanding is we're moving on to using our 3 local newsletters, I'll call them, but rather publications, more in this area. I couldn't get Ashley, I don't know, it's an extra job again, but I think we are heading in that direction. You're quite right, and I did note in the disability action plan, a lot of people said that they actually don't do Facebook, perhaps I wasn't right in, but they do sort of use the old time, dare I say, newsletters, and I think that's well noted, Councillor, because people like seeing it on a piece of paper or one line, but a more local thing.
With a nice picture of
With a nice picture of something, yes. Yes, okay, that's all you have.
Thank you.
Back to Councillor Quammen on the information document.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Two, please. I can totally agree with Councillor Lang and totally support what he said. It's been an ongoing thing with me that we support our 3 papers with relevant information what council is doing, because I'm involved with the Tailem topics myself, and it is a great avenue for getting information out, and I'd love to see council get more engaged with information on there, because this is a very good avenue of putting information out there. And the other thing is, Mr Mayor, this concept drawing of the toilet here, proposed toilet then has a flat roof, so it's got no box gutters.
No box gutters, Councillor, very good. That one in whatever year, 6-inch rainfall year that we may get soon. Better not get soon with my harvest. Anyone else on information document, councillors? Because we're nearly at the end then.
One thing, Mr Mayor, the traffic council summary report.
It's interesting, isn't it?
Yamali Road, I think they've made a little bit of balls up there. Also, it should be 65, not 229.
So the challenge in that report, unfortunately, is I need to know where the council was, as in a street number, because that could be Councillor Hill's property where she might be doing wheelies or not. I don't know.
It's quite easy. 36 days divided by the total volumes is 2,341 is 65 vehicles per day, not 229. There's a big difference between 229 vehicles per day.
But you wanted to grow
65. So
anyway, it does need the location. The times are good because you can pick school holidays, but it does need the location for us to know the district, to know roughly where the story is coming from. Anyone else on the information document, councillors? Still Councillor Quammen, your name back up, you're going.
Yes, I'm sorry to keep you busy, Mr Mayor. Just one that comes to mind, and through you to maybe the CEO, how that contractor is going to be okay repairing the surface there, the big netball court, remember it's all.
What page are you on? Yes, my understanding, and I haven't got an update for you, but the contractor is, has been recommissioned to fix it. And they will be doing that before the start of the new season.
Thank you. I just thought I'd bring that up in the chamber, Mr. Mayor, because it was a bit of a problem and concern.
Very disappointing job, so they will fix it or else. Basically. Nothing else, councillors? Item 16 is confidential items, we have nothing. That means, close the meeting at 4:48, please. Anna, welcome Anna, I hope you enjoyed taking the minutes. Councillors, I did ask very earlier,